from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, if it isn't Monday morning, happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to today's Practitioner Brief. I am your host, James Azar. It is March 22nd, 2021. We have a great show coming your way today. A bunch of very interesting stories from over the weekend and that we missed on Friday because we don't do the show on Friday. But before we get started on today's show, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Good morning. You can comment. We'll bring up your comments. We'll answer your questions. That's the point of this show. We're going to try to get as much as possible done in the next 10 minutes to get you started on the right foot this week with all the various cybersecurity challenges that exist for the practitioners. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for tuning into the Practitioner Brief. Please comment and subscribe right now and share today's episode. If you're listening after the fact on your favorite podcast listening platform, please make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. That will turn it up and help boost up our rating. Yeah, and we want to turn it up a little bit here this week. We're wrapping up the month of March and the end of the first quarter, so a lot of things to talk about. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at KnowBe4, so check them out, show them some support. They are in the show notes as well. Now let's get right into our practitioner brief. Sorry, but before we do that, it is Monday. Our ceremonial sip of coffee to our good friend Scott Adams, who is just an absolute gem of a human being and a national asset. Cheers. I'm a traditional double espresso. All right. That is my third double espresso this morning. We did a Clubhouse room, and we'll talk about Clubhouse in just a moment here. But let's start off with our first story of the day, a critical F5 big IP flaw that is now under active attack, according to the folks over let me see who this is by. I believe this is coming from security researchers. That is NCC Group. There we go. So NCC Group is reporting that mass scanning and in the wild exploitation of the critical severity flaw in the F5 Big IP and Big IQ enterprise networking infrastructure, the unauthenticated remote command execution flaw CVE 2021-229-86 exists in the F5 Big IP and Big IQ enterprise networking infrastructure and could allow attackers to take full control over a vulnerable system. Earlier in March, F5 issued a patch for the flaw, which has a CVSS rating of 9.8 and exists in the iControl REST interface. After the patch was issued, several researchers posted proof of concept exploit code after reverse engineering the Java software patch in Big IP. Fast forward now, and researchers are reporting mass scanning for the in the wild exploitation. CISO has urged companies using the Big IP and Big IQ to fix the critical F5 flaw, along with another bug being tracked, the CVE 2021-229-87. The flaw with a CVSS rating of 9.9 affects the infrastructure's traffic management user interface, also referred to as the configuration utility. When running in appliance mode, the TMUI has an authenticated RCE vulnerability in disclosed pages. The scenario is particularly urgent as F5 provides networking to some of the largest tech companies in the world, including Facebook, Microsoft, and Oracle. Our friends at Microsoft have just been at this since December. God bless their hearts. Security experts in July urged companies to deploy. So F5's had a bunch of these exploits. So let's start off with that. Nothing is perfect. There's no device that's perfect. We're not going to go down the path of F5 should. These things happen. The software supply chain is an extremely challenging one, and we'll talk about that here. We have a few more stories that'll highlight just how difficult this is. If you are using F5 Big IP, please ensure you are patching it. If you're having challenges, reach out to F5, get their assistance. We need to approach our security vendors like our partners, and vendors should do the same with their organizations as well. We move on to another story where a new malware has been hidden in the Apple IDE, and it targets Mac OS developers. The Xcode spy is the latest example of growing attacks on the software supply chain. This is by Jai Vijayan over at Dark Reading. Researchers from SentinelOne have discovered the new malware targeting developers of Mac OS apps in the latest sign of growing attacker interest in the supply chain. The malware Xcode Spy is disguised as a legitimate Xcode open source project called Tab Bar Interaction that provides macOS developers with code for animating the iOS tab bar based on user interface. Xcode is integrated development environment provided by Apple for developers to create software applications for all of Apple's platforms. It is free to download and is chiefly used by developers to create apps for iPhone, iPad apps, and Mac. The Xcode Spy installs a variant of the Eggshell backdoor on the Apple developer's macOS system. The backdoor is designed to spy on the developer and has features for recording the victim's camera, microphone, and keyboard activity. It also has the ability to download and upload files and to remain persistent on the infected system. The malware is executed when a developer using the Trojanized version of the Tab Bar Interaction Xcode project launches what is known as the build target in Xcode. Xcode Spy malware contacts the attacker's command and control server and drops the Eggshell backdoor on the development machine, according to SentinelOne. Injecting malware into the Xcode project gives attackers a way to target developers and potential backdoors into the developers' apps and the customers of those apps as well. So again, software supply chain, we just talked about it a second ago with F5. Same thing exists here. DevSecOps is critical. Working with our development teams, ensuring that our software supply chain is legit, ensuring that we're using the right repository, which, by the way, is becoming awfully more difficult. And, I'm going to reach out to my friends over at GitLab and get some notices from them over what we can do to really solve this challenge. I'd be interested to hear from them as well and bring that over to you later this week, hopefully. We move on to the most popular app in the world today, the exclusive club of Clubhouse, where I was just broadcasting just 2 short hours ago with my good friend JJ. And now, so Clubhouse is only on iOS. It's not on Android, but you know how cyber attackers are. So the Blackrock malware, which steals credentials from 458 services, including Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, and Amazon, is now in the Clubhouse Google Play Store, pretending to take people to a store where they can pretending to take people to a website where they can actually get the app and from there join the popular app. That has not been the case, according to here over the folks over at ThreatPost. What's really happening is the victims click on a button that purportedly to download the app. Blackrock is then installed in the system, and then Blackrock starts to scan and steal credentials and login data. This is according to the folks over at ESET. The targeted list of app credentials include well-known financial and shopping apps, cryptocurrency exchanges, and social media and messaging apps, including Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Outlook, eBay, Coinbase, Plus 500, Cash App, BBVA, and Lloyd's Bank, among many, many more. Again, 458 organizations that are challenged with them there, folks. So a few things, folks. One, the really important right now to communicate to folks in your organization if they're downloading Clubhouse on any device with company information to ensure that Clubhouse is only available on iOS. There's no bootleg version that's available on Android. That's critical. And I think that'll prevent most of these, and sharing it down would probably solve most of the problems here. Google Zero Day releases that a sophisticated APT group burnt 11 zero days in a mass spying operation. Google has added new details on a pair of exploit servers used by a sophisticated threat actor to hit users of Windows, iOS, and Android devices. The malware hunters at Google continue to call attention to a sophisticated APT group that's burned through at least 11 zero-day exploits in less than a year to conduct mass spying across a range of platforms and devices. The group has actively used watering holes attacks to redirect specific targets to a pair of exploit servers delivering malware on Windows, iOS, and Android devices. The cross-platform capabilities and the willingness to use almost a dozen 0 days in less than a year signals a well-resourced actor with the ability to access hacking tool and exploits from related teams. In the blog post, Google 0-day researcher Maddie Stone releases additional details of the exploit in the wild from last October, and we're in the latest discoveries tied to a February 2020 campaign that includes the use of multiple 0 days. In our testing, Maddie says that both the exploit servers existed on all of the discovered domain. And so a very interesting little piece here that's worth reading from Google 0-day. I will say this, that the exploits related to the Chrome free type RCE CVE 2020-15999 as the rendered exploit for Windows and Android. In all, Stone and his Google Project Zero team snagged one full exploit chain hitting Chrome on Windows, 2 partial exploits chains targeting full-patched Android devices running Chrome and the Samsung browser, and remote code execution exploits on iOS 11 and iOS 13. Something that's you should keep an eye out for. And finally, a cyber attack tied to China is boosting the development bank chief. So the International Development Bank, a international bank that lends money to nation states, has been targeted by China, and the Inter-American Development Bank requests that more than 15,000 internet addresses through China flooded the bank's website on September 24th of 2019, knocking part of it intermittently offline. To unclog the network, the bank took the drastic step of blocking all traffic from China. News of the attack is just surfacing just as the bank's new president, Mauricio Claver-Carone, seeks to leverage his hawkish views on China from his time in the President Trump's administration to outmaneuver those in Washington and beyond, still fuming over his politically charged election last year. Claver-Carone, the former NSC senior director for Western Hemisphere Affairs, chaired last week in Colombia his first annual meeting of the IDP since he was elected last fall over the objection of some Democratic lawmakers. Mauricio Claver-Carone, who is very hawkish towards China and should be. China's activities have been concerning, and the fact that they give out predatory loans should be something that we should all be aware of. Over the long term, it is bad for the nation. Apparently, China has been initiating cyber attacks against multiple financial institutions in South America. And part of this report has to do with the fact that there have been over 10 million DDoS attacks against financial organizations just last year in South America and against the IDB itself. And so essentially, they're just trying to make a claim here that China is doing this in regards to this guy getting elected, but China is malicious all of within itself. And my personal opinion is that China is a player that needs to be put in its place. The Chinese Communist Party is a threat to global stability and peace and should be treated as a rogue nation because that's what that leadership is. Something to keep an eye on, especially if you're in the financial space, as China continues its malicious activities against financial organizations now, especially in developing nations. That's it for our practitioner brief here today, folks. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow. Until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in, and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.